graphics card. So one of the most important things, I think one of the most important things for everyone when you're buying a graphics card is people always bother about DX9, DX10, DX11. So chances are that any graphics card you buy today is going to be a DX10 graphics card. So there's nothing really much that you can do in terms of DX9 and DX8. All those cards have basically been phased out. The two major vendors making GPUs around the world, of course, are NVIDIA and ATI. So those are the two guys. If you buy a graphics card today, chances are it will either be an NVIDIA chipset based card or an ATI chipset based card. So any card that you would buy today would be a DX10 card. We're all waiting DX11. DX11 is not out as yet. DX11 cards are yet to hit the market. So all we have today is good old DX10. When choosing a graphics card, one of the most important things to do is to look at your usage requirements. What kind of a user are you? Everyone likes a nice, big, powerful graphics card, but those things are pretty costly. So you could end up paying something like around 35,000 rupees for a GeForce GTX 295, which we know is NVIDIA's top card at the moment. But the question to ask yourself is, do you really need so much of graphics processing hardware? Do you really need so much of GPU grunt under your rig? So the answer lies in your usage pattern. If you're a hardcore gamer, if you're someone who likes to play the latest games like Crysis and Stalker, Clear Sky, and basically all the games which which are heavily shader intensive and so on and so forth, then you may need to look at a reasonably high-end card. But if you're the kind of user who is just interested in casual gaming, maybe you needn't spend so much. Lots and lots of usage scenarios exist, which is why we have lots and lots of graphics cards in different configurations for different prices, right? So someone looking at a high-end card would look at something like ATI Radeon 4890 or a NVIDIA GeForce GTX 285, which would be in the range of anywhere between 16,000 and 25,000. GeForce GTX 285 is the fastest single GPU card in the world at the moment, and it retails for around 25,000 rupees. A little lower down is the ATI 4890, which is available for around 18,000 rupees. So both these cards are enough to satisfy the hardcore gamer. Which of the two you go for, either NVIDIA or ATI, would largely depend on the kind of budget you have. When I say NVIDIA and ATI, I specifically don't mention vendors over here. Of course, there are a lot of brands who make cards based on these two chips. So you would have brands like Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, Zotac, XFX, EVGA, Palette. So there are a whole plethora of brands available, and whichever one you go for largely depends on what budget you have. Certain brands cater to the higher end spectrum who are willing to spend more. Certain brands cater to value segments. Certain brands are zonally available in India. Not all brands are available all over the country. So sometimes your choice may be restricted by the region you stay in. So throughout this little buying guide, I'm just going to be referring largely to NVIDIA and ATI when I talk about graphics chipsets, because these are the guys who make the GPUs, right? So for the higher end, like I said, it's either going to be something like the ATI 4890 or NVIDIA's GTX 285. If you really want to splurge, you could probably opt for a GeForce GTX 295. But then again, there's a whole question, the whole cloud hanging of DX11, because the moment DX11 comes out, your DX10 card within the next year could largely be obsolete. So you may also want to hang on to your cash a bit and end up spending somewhere around 10 or 15,000, which is where ATI's 4870 and NVIDIA's GeForce GTX 260 graphics cards come in. These are not as high performing as the ones I mentioned earlier, but they do give you very good bang for buck. They are really affordable in terms of the performance they offer. I mean, 15,000 is not affordable in any man's books, but the amount of performance you get for what you pay is pretty good. They're good enough to run all your games at decent resolutions with high levels of detail. And of course, users looking to spend a little less, who still want a decent gaming experience, could opt for cards like NVIDIA's GTX 9800 GTX or the 9800 GT, which are available for just under 10,000. The ATI equivalent of the same card would be the Radeon HD 4850, which is also a pretty powerful card and very well priced at around $9,500 for the performance it offers. A tier below this, you have a lot of other graphics cards, which for us are the lower end of the mid-range spectrum, and of course the entry-level cards. These cards are not something that I recommend for gamers. If you buy anything that is less than $7,000, in my opinion, you are looking for more of a HTPC or a very, very entry-level gaming system, or basically a high-end multimedia rig. People looking for, I'll give you a practical example over here. The 9600 GT is not a very powerful gaming card, though it can make decent use in an entry-level gaming system. The benefit of the card is that it's priced at around about 6,000 rupees, which makes it a very good value for money buy. So for people looking at a really entry-level graphics card, you could probably pick up something like an GeForce 8400 GS or an ATI 3450 for around 1,500 to 2,500 rupees, which really represents excellent value for money, because a couple of years back you couldn't even dream of getting a graphics card for these kind of prices. So now I've taken a broad look at the models available, the different models, and how much you can pay for them. What do you generally look for when you go to buy a graphics card? Once you've decided the kind of user you are and how much you want to spend and what kind of card you want to get, the next thing to look at is basically, if you're going for a high-end chipset, you would probably want to look at the number of stream processors on the card, and of course DX10 support, which is now pretty much on all cards. So again, it's very difficult to fix a particular number of stream processors, but I would say anything upward of 128 stream processors on your graphics card makes for a really good graphics card. The higher end GPUs could have as many as 240 stream processors. Of course, talking about NVIDIA versus ATI, ATI actually has up to 800 stream processors on their graphics card, but it's not really an apples to apples comparison, so you can't really say that it's 800 versus 240, 240 being of course NVIDIA's highest value for stream processors on a graphics card. But in general, 128 stream processors and upwards is really good for a gaming system. If you're looking for something like a mid-range rig for gaming, you would probably look around anywhere between 64 and 128 stream processors. 64 stream processors is probably something that you would find on something like a GeForce 9600 GT. And well, 128 stream processors is basically something that you would find on a 9800 GTX. Once again, video RAM is also important. A high-end card could have as much as 1 GB of video RAM. In general, the card should have DDR3 or DDR5 graphics memory. For a mid-range gaming setup, 512 MB should suffice. The difference between 512 MB versions and 1 GB versions of cards are not much these days. So if you're getting a 9800 GT worth around 9,000 with 512 MB of RAM, chances are that the 1 GB version would probably be worth just around $600 or $700 more. In that case, it makes sense to invest the extra amount and get the extra 512 MB of RAM. If you're going for a really entry-level card, for a powerful multimedia PC or something for an HD PC, you don't really need a lot of video RAM. You don't need a lot of graphics processing power. You could get by with a graphics card with 32 stream processors on it and something in the range of 64 to 128 MB of video RAM. Anything else extra is a bonus.